eclectic foursome of aspiring teenage witches get more than they bargained for as they lean into their newfound powers. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. I am here today to share with you all my spoiler-free review for the new film, The Craft Legacy, which is, of course, a sequel to the 96 cult classic, The Craft. Very excited to let you all know what I thought about this film and if you should check it out in this spoiler-free review. Before we dive into it, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts. That way you all can stay up to date on what's going on over here at Movie Files. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Make sure you all subscribe to the channel, and while you're at it, hit that bell so you don't miss any of my other movie reviews, TV reviews, live streams, and all the fun things we do on this very channel. It would mean the world to me if you all can give this video a thumbs up. Helps out the channel, but I also really appreciate it. And in the comments, let's discuss The Craft Legacy. Number one, were you a fan of the 96 movie? And then number two, were you excited for this film? And then let's talk about your pros and cons, and if you want to see more in this franchise, let's discuss it in the comments below. So first and foremost, before I get into my pros, my cons, my overall thoughts, I will say I've seen the 96 version. It's been many, many moons since I've seen the film, but I still remember the premise and the tone and the characters and all that good stuff. But I want to let you all know I'm going to do my best not to compare it to the original, because I think it, for those that haven't seen the original, you know, and all that stuff. So this review will be mainly focused on this film with, you know, maybe one or two references to the first one, but outside of that, it's going to be mostly focused on this film. And again, spoiler free. So with that out of the way, is this a good sequel, or is it just another Hollywood cash grab to the play on the nostalgia of the 90s? Well, let's get into it. So starting off with the positives, first and foremost, I think of our lead actress, who is Cailee Spaeny as Lily. Now, Cailee, big fan of her. She's only been doing movies for a couple years now, and even though Pacific Rim 2 wasn't that good, I liked her in The Row. I think of Bad Times at the El Royale. I think of earlier this year of an incredible sci-fi show, Devs, with Alex Garland. I thought she was fantastic. So I like her screen presence, and I liked her in this film. You know, her as Lily, new to town. She doesn't have any friends. She's trying to discover some new friends, and at the same time discover some new powers. And you're really just watching her on this journey of self-discovery, right? It's essentially a coming-of-age story, right? But then you throw in these witch powers and her get into a coven, her finding people that she can relate to. I kind of liked her journey and her arc throughout the film. And again, I'm just a fan of her as a young actress, and I'm really excited to see her career continue to grow. And she seems to pick some really good projects, so I think she's definitely one of the standouts to me in this entire film. Going back to Lily, I did enjoy the scenes that we got with her and her mother, played by Michelle Monaghan. I liked their chemistry. They were really kind of a cute mom and daughter relationship, and even though we don't get that much time with them, the moments that we do share with them, I really enjoyed their chemistry. Now, speaking of chemistry, when it came to our coven, you know, Lily, Tabby, Lors, Frankie, I found them to have a good time. You know, when the film was at its best, in my opinion, it was the more coming of age, kind of YA, fun, almost comedy, right? Before we get into the more serious tone of the film, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But as a coven goes, I like their chemistry. Out of those four actresses, I mentioned Lily. I really enjoy Cailee. But then also, I think of Lovie Simone. This is my first time really being exposed to her. And out of all the entire cast, she had a lot of fun in the role. She had the most personality, the most spunk, and I just really enjoyed her screen presence as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else she does next. But when it comes to the other two girls, we'll talk about them a little bit later, but as a coven goes, I like their chemistry for the most part, which also brings me into, even though messy at times, in my opinion, I felt the message in regards to empowering women, in regards to finding your own, finding your group, finding your people, finding your coven in this movie, and them embracing you. I stand behind that 1000%, and I always applaud a film when it has that type of message, because we're all have our groups of people we can relate to. We all have our moments where we feel lonely. We feel like we're weird, as they say in this movie. We're the weirdos, and they embrace that, right? So I'm always a fan of a film's messaging, even though I'll talk about it later. I found like that message got lost within the shuffle of the film. But those are some things that definitely came to mind. Transitioning into my criticisms with the film, look, I'm just going to say it up front. I found the script to be very weak. I found the script to be very underdeveloped. You know, you have writer-director Zoe Lister-Jones, who I'm a fan of her work, right? I've seen Zoe in TV shows and movies. I know she's a producer. She has a lot of hats, and kudos to her for just killing it in Hollywood, right? But I felt like it was a little bit too much on her plate. Being a director, being the writer of this film, I found like the tonal shifts within this film, I mentioned it in my positives, At best, the film is a fun YA, almost comedy, coming of age, self-discovery film. But then when they throw in the magical elements, they throw in, some stuff that involves the villain of the film, I found like the film just didn't know what it was in regards to the tonal shift, and it didn't really balance it out. It felt kind of really uneven. And like I said, I give that to the downplay of the script. Now, again, I mentioned I love the idea of embracing yourself, women empowering one another, supporting each other, building a community. But then when I look at this film, when it comes to that message, it felt kind of wasted, right? I don't want to get into the spoilers, but there's our main four witches, and then there's Timmy. Now, Timmy is your stereotypical 90s bully who's placed in a 2020 film, and the film focused most of the first and second half of casting a spell on Timmy, right? And we're watching all this kind of play out, and though I was intrigued by the Timmy storyline, I thought they gave him more than what you initially thought, and he is more in me side of that character, which I appreciated. But when it comes to the payoff, again, we spend literally almost 50 minutes on Timmy and this casting of the spell, and then once things kind of play out with Timmy, the payoff isn't there. At least for me, I found like the thing that happens just didn't have a payoff for me personally, which kind of brings me into my other things with the film. And this might sound like minor things, but it was something that stood out. The crafting of the film to me was a little bit uneven as well. I'm thinking of the editing. I'm thinking of the pacing. And regarding to the editing, the scenes just abruptly ended, and just the transition from one scene to the next just felt kind of clunky to me, which also brings me into the idea of the script. Filling in the blanks. There's a lot of times in this movie where you don't know how long these friends have been friends, how long this coven has been together, how long have they been working on magic. You get like this 5-minute montage of the magic, of them lifting each other. You see it in the trailer, which is very reminiscent to the original. You see them doing that stuff, but you don't really get a sense of this sisterhood, right? How long have you guys been embracing each other? And when it comes to this community being built, something happens in the film when that community gets crumbled, and it's just like, well, I thought we were empowering each other. I thought we were there for each other. But no, it's like it contradicts itself without getting to the spoilers. Bringing it back to the coven, I mentioned, Lovie Simone, Lily, but then when it comes to Lors and Frankie, besides them giving out one or two catchphrases from the 90s and then wearing the 90s nostalgia, I found like Lors and Frankie had nothing to do in this film. And I'm not too familiar with the one actress, but the one, Gideon Adlon, I believe her name is, she was really great in Blockers. I thought she was funny, but she just was just the punchline in this film. Really had nothing else to do in this film, and that was really unfortunate because I really wanted to fall in love with the coven like I did in the 96 version, right? Which brings me to the magic. Besides them spending 90% of the film on casting a spell on Timmy, which I talked about earlier, the other things that they do in magic is literally just using it for, putting on their makeup, using fire, which it's just like, okay, you have fire powers, but then like when you discover it later in the film, it's like it's the first time you use it. I found the magic to be really, really underused in this film, if I'm being honest. And then my biggest gripe with this movie, wrapping this negative up, David Duchovny as the character Adam, which, we see Michelle Monaghan, she takes her daughter across the country, we assume, and we're just kind of placed into this situation where she's moving in with Adam and his 3 boys. It's just like, okay, I guess this is just the situation we're in, right? No explanation. But when it comes to Adam, I get the film's message. I know what they're doing with this character. They're really kind of using this character as like toxicity and, when it comes to misogynistic ways and, the olden ways of how men perceive women, and there has to be order and the men are more dominant than women, all that stuff. Without getting into the spoilers, I get that, right? But it's just like there's a more compelling, more intriguing, more interesting way to tell that story rather than just beating you over the head with it. Again, I applaud filmmakers telling the stories of like how things are not right in the world and how men shouldn't treat women, but there's a way about going about that story without just putting it in your face, without fully developing a character. Adam, David Duchovny, big fan of yours, man. You were terrible in this movie. You were easily the weakest part of this film, which brings me to the conclusion of this film, which was absolutely terrible in my opinion. It was like the last Airbender special effects. It was just like power, earth, wind, fire. That sequence to me was just really, really terrible and just not really put together well. And also the last 5 minutes of the movie, without spoilers, you guys could have did something more creative than that. But wrapping this thing up, man, overall thoughts before I give you guys my score and if you should check it out, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss any of my other content. And now getting to my overall score and letting you all know if this movie is worth checking out. So up top, I posed the question, is this a good sequel or is this another Hollywood cash grab playing off the nostalgia? Unfortunately, I think it's the latter. I think this film tries to be the 96 version, but doesn't have the same effect. The characters aren't as strong. The storyline isn't as developed, and our main villain was just a waste of time. At the end of the day, look, I'm all about, again, embracing yourself, finding out who the people that you can relate to, having like-minded people, people that support you. I'm all about that story, but I found like this film just kind of lost it in the shuffle, right? It could have been a really interesting coming-of-age comedy with some witch powers, but the film is just something all else in entirety. There are some good performances between Lily and Lovie Simone, but then besides that, I really couldn't find a lot of this film that I really enjoyed. So with that being said, I'm giving The Craft Legacy a 2 out of 5. Again, this movie is available to rent on VOD coming this week. I believe you can rent it for $19 or buy it for $25, something like that. Take my review as you will. If you guys want to check it out, let me know what you all thought of it. Did you enjoy the original over the sequel, or did you enjoy the sequel more than original? Let me know if you want to see a sequel to this movie, and let's have a discussion in the comments below. As always, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss any of my new videos. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.